I'm Mark Halperin.
And I'm John Heilemann. And with all due respect to Hillary Clinton's summer Friday document dump, thanks a lot, lady. Happy National Document Dump Friday, sports fans. In our lineup tonight, money and insults. But first, the aforementioned document dump. A trifecta of Hillary Clinton disclosures are out on this sizzling summer evening. Temperature in Brooklyn, 89 degrees. Health records, check. She's doing fine. Tax statements, check. She says that since 2007, her family has paid more than $43 million in federal taxes. And that last year, they paid a combined federal, state, and local effective rate of 45.8%. But most of the newsroom analyzing is being devoted to the 2,200 emails released by the State Department today. There's no news about Benghazi. Sorry about that. But there are a few communications from Sid Blumenthal, some talk of Cinco de Mayo, image consciousness, and Meet the Press, and a Paul Begala shout-out. About 12% of the 55,000 total pages of Hillary Clinton emails have now been released. Mark, this whole thing going on here today is clearly an attempt to overload your circuits, my circuits, the whole of the media circuitry. Will it work?
It'll work in part. There won't be as much written about any of the three things, not the emails, not the health records, and not the tax information, as if they came out on their own, not on a summer Friday night. But the way the Clintons get scrutinized, anything in there that needs scrutiny will get scrutiny.
It will get scrutiny, and like if you look right now, everybody's still pawing through all this stuff right now in newsrooms all over this city and the country. So it's hard to render judgment on what's in any of this stuff. It doesn't seem that there's anything right now devastating in these emails as far as we know. The tax numbers, obviously a lot to dig in there. But the effective tax rates, the amount they gave to charity, those are not going to draw criticism or negativity, I don't think. She seems like she's in a pretty good place politically on those fronts, what we know at this moment.
Yeah. On the health records, she didn't release the actual records. She did what many people have done,
including the President of the United States,
which is a document, a note from her doctor basically saying, here are the details. And the doctor went into some detail on the question of when she had that concussion. That's drawn a lot of conservative interest. The account there, I'm sure a lot of people will question. But I think the key is not these emails, which have a lot of color in them, more to come, not the health records, which I think will satisfy most people. It's the details we're still waiting on from some of her financials.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it is the notion of the Clintons, her richness, his richness, their collective richness, how they handle that, how they talk about it, especially how they talk about it, has been a problem for them. And so beyond even the details, there will now be questions. And when they are asked, how she answers them could be a problem for her because she hasn't handled questions about her money that well so far.
By some metrics, I believe the biggest Friday summer document dump ever. Congratulations, Brooklyn. You set some sort of record.
Yeah, fabulous. End of July.
All right, hot outside in Brooklyn, also hot in Fort Lauderdale today, and really hot inside the Broward County Convention Center, where the National Urban League was holding its annual confab, hearing from presidential candidates, including Hillary Clinton, who took the stage on Jeb Bush's home turf and turned his catchphrase, "Right to Rise," into both an attack line and a punchline.
I don't think you can credibly say that everyone has a right to rise and then say you're for phasing out Medicare or for repealing Obamacare. People can't rise if they can't afford health care. They can't rise if the minimum wage is too low to live on. They can't rise if their governor makes it harder for them to get a college education. And you cannot seriously talk about the right to rise and support laws that deny the right to vote.
So Clinton takes a pretty direct shot at Jeb Bush. So it's Jeb Bush's turn to fire back, go toe-to-toe, legacy candidate to legacy candidate, raise the stakes, bring down the big Jeb Bush hammer. Here's how he took it to Hillary Clinton.
When President Obama says that, quote, "For too long we've been blind to the way past injustices continue to shape the present," he is speaking the truth. But we should be just as candid about our failures in addressing the injustices of a more recent origin. In our cities, we've got so many people who have never known anything but poverty, so many young adults with no vision of a life beyond the life they know. Every one of them was also promised at least one big break in life, in the form of a public school to help them learn who they are and what they can do.
All right, so while Jeb Bush turned the other cheek, he left the responding to Hillary Clinton to his spokesman, Tim Miller, who took to Twitter with this spicy response. Quote, Clinton-esque move to pass over a chance to unite in favor of a false cheap shot when you have no record of accomplishment to point to, ... Yes, ... indeed, Tim Miller. John, did Secretary Clinton execute the play she wanted to execute at the Urban League? Why did she do it, and how do you think it's going to work?
She executed the play she wanted to execute, which is she thinks she's going to be the Democratic nominee. This signals, among other things, that she thinks Jeb Bush is going to be the Republican nominee, and she wants to get out in front and start framing him up. I don't know if it's the right play, because by elevating him in this way, she probably does more to contribute to his likelihood to be the nominee than keep him from being the nominee when the Republican race is, I think, far from settled.
Yeah, and of course, the more they paint him as a conservative, the more he can tell people I'm a conservative.
Right.
I believe that Hillary Clinton can win this race, if it is Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton, if she defines him as too conservative for the electorate. What Barack Obama did to John McCain, what he did to Mitt Romney. I think the way she framed things up today was smart and aggressive, and it's going to help her win the nomination. And if she's successful, it's going to help her win the White House.
Like I say, the downside risk, I don't think we're saying the same thing in slightly different ways. The downside risk is that it helps Jeb to have her attacking him when his problem with a lot of Republicans is he's not seen as conservative enough. When Hillary attacks him as being too conservative, helps him, as you said. But there is no doubt that the question, what's so interesting to me about this is that she is running as a quasi-incumbent. The inherent thing going on here is, I'm going to be the nominee.
She's also running negative, and Jeb Bush is going to be reluctant to do that, although his super PAC may feel otherwise.
Yeah. All right. The other part of this document dump day are those super PAC filings that are now flooding out into the media echo chamber. They are pretty much in line with everyone's expectations, and the AP reports that Democratic super PACs pulled in less than 9% of the total super PAC cash. One interesting story buried in here is who can write those monster checks. 3 of the biggest donors gave to Ted Cruz. First up, Robert Mercer, the New York hedge fund manager, gave 11 million smackaroos to help Cruz. Toby Nagelbauer, a co-founder of a private equity firm in Texas, gave $10 million. And also giving a combined $10 million were Texas oil field executive Ferris Wilks and his wife Joanne, plus another $5 million from his brother Daniel Wilkes and his wife Stacy. Those Wilkses are pretty rich and pretty generous. All right, Mark. So what should be the biggest focus / takeaway from this flood of super PAC dollar reports?
Democrats are going to have to step up getting more super PAC donations, particularly Hillary Clinton. 2, can Ted Cruz get the people who've given him $10 million plus to keep giving? Yeah. That's obviously huge. Bush has taken the $1 million cap off on his super PAC. Can they go back to those people they already are and get a lot more? And then finally, Scott Walker, he needs to be playing in this hot super PAC league. He's got the support of the Ricketts family. Yeah. That's super important. But he needs more people who can write mega checks. He
does, although I will say, if you look further down the list, we had to cut this list off to make it manageable at people who gave more than $5 million, which is kind of an incredible number. If you look in that range, $1 million, $2 million, Walker got a fair number of those checks. That's good for him. Rick Perry got a few of those checks, too. This is, to me, the big first illustration of the fact that we've all talked about theoretically before, which is that for some of these candidates who are not top-tier candidates, this super PAC world that we're now in, where people write these kind of size checks, is the lifeline, and it's the thing that will give someone like Cruz, maybe Perry, viability when they wouldn't have it on other bases.
If you spend it smart. The Walker super PAC is unified. Remember, those Cruz super PAC checks are going to four different super PACs, each with kind of a different agenda, each with a different point of view. I still think the raising is important. The spending is incredibly important. The Kasich super PAC is on the air. We reported today they got a new 30-second spot going on in New Hampshire. When does Mike Murphy, Jeb's former top advisor at the campaign, now super PAC,
start to spend some of that dough?
All right, coming up, Hillary Clinton's advisor, strategist, pollster, former pollster to Barack Obama, Joel Benenson of New York, will join us. We'll ask him about all the data after this word from our sponsors. Our guest tonight working hard this Friday night instead of kicking back at Robert Moses State Park. He's Hillary Clinton's strategist and pollster, Joel Benenson. Joel, thanks for coming in.
Happy to be here.
You're supposed to be here last night, but we're happy to have you today because your candidate, Hillary Clinton, much in the news. You're a former journalist.
Yes.
If you were a former journalist, what would you say about the campaign releasing her health records and tax records and income statements all on a Friday night?
I would say it is the most expansive, transparent release of documents ever. In total, with the 8 years of documents on her tax returns released today,
more than anyone ever
38
has.
Years in total the Clintons have
released. Let's see Jeb Bush do that, stipulated.
Well,
but Joel, why Friday night in July? Why?
Look, I think campaigns release documents when they have them ready, when they're, it's now July. We wanted to do it early.
So nothing. I didn't do it on a Friday in July on purpose.
You know, as a reporter, I think every candidate I ever covered released their documents on a Friday.
Well, let's just be clear. The tax records are one thing when you have the documents ready, but that letter from the physician, that's like a page and a half. That could have come pretty much any time. And deciding to do that on the same day as the taxes, you're not really going to try to claim that doesn't have some tactical. Intention.
But if you have documents you're going to release, why not do it all at once? Why spread it out? I mean, the fact of the matter is today was a day we said we're going to disclose everything. Let's disclose the health records. Let's disclose the tax returns. And by the way, on the tax returns, if you want to compare transparency on what Secretary Clinton's done versus others, the Clintons have released in detail, itemized, where their speaking fees came from, where business fees came from, and consulting fees. You know, Jeb Bush said he was setting the standard for disclosure when he did this. He's got $19 million in business fees. He hasn't identified where it came from.
Would you challenge him to reveal what's in
I'm not going to challenge him. I'm just going to say if you say you're going to set the standard for transparency, then you ought to say where your $19 million came from.
So in terms of the Clintons being very wealthy, and her statement made clear that, they're feel very lucky to be so wealthy, is that a potential vulnerability with voters?
You know, I think voters understand that the Clintons feel very blessed to have had the success they've had. They've been in public life a long time. They've been in private life on and off for a bit, too. I think voters want to know whether people really get their lives, whether people will fight for them every day, whether they will take and put their lives front and center, the issues about whether their kids can get educated, whether their incomes can go up. That's what they're going to judge people on. We've had a history. Would anybody say Franklin Roosevelt, who was one of the wealthiest presidents we ever had, didn't stand up and fight for average people, or his cousin Teddy Roosevelt, or John Kennedy? No. I think what they do is they measure people by what they do for people like them, and I think that's what this election will come down to as well.
Joel, I just want to be clear. You are never going to convince me that the idea that you guys released these two documents on the same day that this new tranche of emails came out was a pure coincidence, and that you guys just did these.
I didn't say it was a coincidence. I said we decided to disclose on one day the documents that we knew reporters were going to be asked for.
But on the day that the emails all came out?
If we didn't release it, you guys would be sitting here saying, Joel, why didn't you release her health records? Is there something wrong with her health? So just take it all off the table all at once.
Well, we're going to.
Is that okay?
That's great. It's great. I mean, I don't believe you at all, but that's fine. I want to talk to you about one of the things you talked about the political dimensions that Mark suggested around her wealth. There is one obvious political dimension where she has heard the numbers, and you're a student of numbers, where she has been having trouble. You guys have talked about this a bit, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. One is that her unfavorables are really high. They're like Chris Christie high in a lot of polling now. The other is this honest and trustworthy question, which she's underwater. More people find her untrustworthy than find her trustworthy, and the numbers are getting worse and worse month after month in Iowa and other places. I know. Tell us why that is not something that should concern her as a candidate and you.
I don't have enough time to ask why you guys, when you get a press release that says poll on it, you report it as if it's gospel truth. There are polls out there that have been wrong historically, but you guys latch on to them because it gives you a piece of news. The poll in Colorado or Iowa that you referred to the other day, do you know that poll, you ought to ask Governor Beaupre in Colorado how he feels about that poll, because they were wrong in that state before. Let me go back to
find the different data about her trustworthiness.
First of all, not only in my polling, go to pollster.com, go to the Marist poll that came out this morning where Hillary Clinton is leading every Republican by at least 5 to 10 points or more.
Not the question we're talking about, though. We're talking about the honest and trustworthy
question. And the honest and trustworthy question is a question that I would never ask the way it's asked. I don't think it's a well-constructed question. What people want to know is not a binomial question on trust. They want to know, who can I count on to get stuff done for me?
So you're saying you don't ask that question in your
I believe there's a reason why we're winning. You want to talk about favorable and unfavorable. Again, go to pollster.com. Please go look. She's -4. Every Republican is the closest one to her is at -3. Jeb Bush is -14 underwater. And here's another thing. You guys are latching on to her. Every one of these Republicans is significantly worse in their favorable standing than either John McCain was at a comparable point in 2007 or Mitt Romney in 2011. You guys ought to be asking them, why do they spend their time swimming underwater compared to their predecessors as opposed to anybody else?
Just let me ask you this question. Do you guys try to measure her honest and trustworthiness with people in the data, in the polling that you do?
We actually have. I'm pretty confident in my polling, John and Mark. I think you guys know I've got a pretty good track record on it. I know what attributes are driving people to vote, and we're doing just fine, which is why she's leading every Republican candidate in this field in almost every poll.
But just to be clear, I think I understand what you're saying, although maybe I'm wrong.
I'm not going to tell you which attributes are most important to voters and how they define trust.
Are you saying that the questions which you're saying you don't like the wording, but are you saying that she can get elected, be the nominee and get elected president, even if people don't find her to be trustworthy?
I think that's a flawed question.
Well,
no.
Forget whether it's a flawed. People are asking you.
No, but people who don't...
Favorable, unfavorable. Favorable, unfavorable is not a flawed question, right?
Yeah, but she's doing as well or better than all the Republicans in the field.
Can she get elected president even if more people view her unfavorably? Can she?
She will be favorable and above water when she's elected president. And by the way,
and if she's not,
and by the way,
if she's not, can she be?
I went back and forth with you guys in 2011. Nate Silver, is Obama toast? Obama can't win. Unemployment's this high. Right track, wrong track is here.
Nate Silver on that.
There's no one at this table who ever cited Nate Silver in a conversation with you.
But my point is, you guys pick out a number, and you think that's the determinative number.
Yes, no. Can she get elected president if her favorables are lower?
But if favorable numbers will be higher and she will get elected president.
Can she get elected, yes or no?
I think people right now at 50-50 can get elected. Barack Obama's favorables were 50-50, and he won 330 electoral votes.
What if she's underwater and favorable, unfavorable? If more people look at her unfavorable, can't she get elected if more people look at her unfavorable than favorable?
I have no idea.
Okay. Let's get to this last question. We don't have that much more time. She steadfastly refuses to take a position on the Keystone Pipeline. Why? Why can she not take a position on that issue?
I think she answered that the other day. She's been involved as Secretary of State, and she answered it yesterday, in evaluating that pipeline, providing information, and advising the president on that issue in that role.
She's taken positions on issues like that, like Iran, like trade, that she was involved in throughout her time as Secretary of State. She's taken positions on those things. Why is this different?
He is going to make a decision now, and she has said she'll discuss this when his decision is made. He's going to offer this decision fairly soon, I presume. I suppose you do as well. You know, she's been involved very much in evaluating this in a formal process that as Secretary of State, she had to engage in.
Would it be, one last question because we got to go, would it be politically better for her to oppose it or support it?
I always think it's politically better for candidates to take the positions that they believe in. And if she believes in it, she should say it. If she doesn't believe in it, she should say that. She'll have that opportunity, but she's going to give the president the opportunity to take his position and make the ruling he's going to make. And she was part of that evaluation process, and that's why she should wait until he speaks.
I bet that answer polls really well.
Yes. Joel, thank you for coming in. Come back regularly, maybe every Friday.
Maybe. Not every Friday, but I'll come back.
All right. Joel Benenson, thank you. When we come back, more from our Donald Trump focus group with New Hampshire voters right after this.
Yesterday, we showed you some clips from our Donald Trump focus group with New Hampshire voters in conjunction with Purple Strategies. Today, we've selected 2 bonus clips for your viewing pleasure. The first is about whether the Donald could run as a third-party candidate or an independent candidate for president in the general election.
Anybody in this room who would be open to supporting Donald Trump as a third-party/independent candidate for president against Republicans and Democrats?
No way.
Depends who the Republicans.
Positively. Okay. I want to hear from both sides.
The only thing I can think of that would force him out is the Republican establishment and the RNC doing something and actually forcing him out. And if that's the case, then I'm voting for Trump as an independent, and it's going to teach Republicans a lesson, even if we have another Democrat, which is going to be terrible for our country. But
yeah. So for those of you who wouldn't support Trump if he ran as an independent, why would you not support him as an independent?
Ross Perot.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely. I don't think we're ready as a country for the three-party thing, and the percentages are too much on the Democrat and Republican that I think it would screw everything up. So no way.
I mean, you think it would help elect a Democrat?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It absolutely
proven.
Yep.
No, the numbers, math doesn't lie.
Yeah. I think we're stuck in the two-party system, though, because we don't get these good third-party candidates, and I think it would be good for the country.
We never would get anyone this strong.
No way.
In New Hampshire, we've had the Libertarian Party, and they had a few good candidates, but the whole system isn't big enough to allow them to get any traction.
No.
Yeah, if they could get 5% of the popular vote, though, for a third party in a presidential election, then they become a federally recognized, and then they have to be on the ballot in every state. And they don't have to jump through the hoops they do now.
Too scary for next year, though. We're not there yet.
I'm forward thinking. I've got hope for the future.
Right, and I think that would be awesome someday. But next year, I mean, we cannot go down, 8 year, we just can't.
This next clip is about why these New Hampshire voters felt that Donald Trump seems like a man of the people.
How is it that a guy who is so much more financially successful than anybody in this room, how is it that guy can be also feel to a lot of you like he's an average guy, like one of us, as a lot of people put it here? How do you square those ideas in your mind?
Because he's not a politician, and that's the problem.
He earned it. We could have all done the same thing, too.
He didn't inherit it.
Yeah, right, Todd.
He's
an American.
Yeah,
he succeeded.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't get the same, health care in Congress that everybody else who's making these laws gets, that's separate from the Obamacare that everybody else in the country gets. He's living by our rules.
Yep.
Not the made-up special rules for the protected citizens, politicians.
I think he was handed a silver spoon.
He started out pretty good. He went to the best schools. But I think it's not so, it's keeping track of money that sort of puts you in the hierarchy and everything. But success, I'm an extremely successful person in my own mind, as we all are. I'm a reasonably successful person when you compare me to Donald Trump, not necessarily financial. But that's what you like about a candidate is, if you think you've done the right things, and he seems to have done the right things, then maybe he is right. And I think it's human nature. But I think he's a successful person, and he's earned it. I'm successful. I earned it. Most of the people here have said they're successful, and they've earned it.
He worked.
I think we're tired of politics as usual, politicians as usual.
All right. We will be right back with one more clip of Donald Trump, this one featuring the great Larry King, after this. Finally, we have a special message for Donald Trump. When you come back on our show, Donald, we promise to scarf down a bunch of Mentos first.
Do you mind if I sit back a little bit? Because your breath is very bad. It really is. Has this ever been told to you before?
No.
Huh? Okay, then I won't bother. No, actually,
that's how you get the edge.
That's how you get the edge. The Don and the King Classic. Remember, one twice a day, 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. Have a Bafo weekend. Until next week, sayonara.